She was the illegitimate daughter of King Henry VIII and his maid in Boleyn. After donning the crown, she navigated the European royal courts through political marriages. She had emotional entanglements with several of her favorite courtiers, even having close relationships with a father and son. Yet, she is the woman whom all of England should be thankful for. She transformed the precarious nation of England into one of the most prosperous countries in Europe. This red hair symbolizes the Tudor dynasty, representing both her beauty and danger. This film won 2 Oscars for Best Makeup and Best Music, and it received nominations for Best Actress, Cinematography, Costume, Best Film, and Best Production Design. Cate Blanchett perfectly portrayed this more relatable queen, showcasing the love, glory, and pain of the Queen of England. Stories of humanity are often more persuasive than tales of war and conflict. Let us delve into this grand and intensely dramatic film, Elizabeth. In 1554, Henry VIII passed away, and the country fell into disarray. His only son, Edward, who was merely 9 years old, ascended to the throne briefly. Edward was frail and sickly, and died 6 years later. He designated Jane Grey as his successor, but she was executed just 9 days after taking the throne. Following her, Princess Mary, the daughter of Henry VIII, took power. Queen Mary Tudor was a devout Catholic who hated Protestantism and executed about 300 Protestants. Mary was also known during this period as Bloody Mary. During this time, Mary was also involved in a political marriage with a Spanish prince who was 11 years her junior. Mary is pregnant, and rumors spread across Europe that she is about to give birth to a son. Her maid is the Duke of Norfolk's spy.
There are symptoms. She has ceased to bleed, her breasts produce some milk, and her stomach is swollen.
Is it true?
The king has not shared her bed for many months. He has a repugnance for it, as lately your grace has for mine.
Queen Mary's brutality led to her losing the support of the people. The ministers were most concerned that heretics would place another of Henry VIII's heirs on the throne. She is Mary's half-sister, Princess Elizabeth. Mary sent agents to find evidence of Elizabeth's treason. Outside the palace, Elizabeth, who has been under house arrest, is in adolescence. She received a good education and was fluent in several languages. Her first love was Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. They were the same age, having known each other since childhood, sharing mutual understanding and immersing themselves in a beautiful romance. Just then, a group of soldiers arrived, and the ministers accused Elizabeth of treason, intending to imprison her. Robert wanted to confront them, but Elizabeth stopped him. The dark, eerie Tower of London did not intimidate Elizabeth. The ministers took turns interrogating her, and Elizabeth struggled to understand why there must be such divisions in religion. She insisted she was loyal to Queen Mary. Seeing no results from the questioning, the officials had no choice but to send her to an even darker dungeon. Elizabeth thought she had no chance of escape, but then a turning point came. Mary's husband suddenly passed away, and she was filled with agony, believing that Elizabeth's curse was to blame. The two had not seen each other in years, and Mary's memories of her sister had faded.
When I look at you, I see nothing of the king. Only that whore, your mother. My father never did anything so well as to cut off her head.
Your Majesty forgets he was also my father.
Why will you not confess your crimes against me?
Because, Your Majesty, I have committed none.
The queen had not given birth to an heir, and her subjects mocked her claims of pregnancy, suggesting she was growing a tumor instead. Mary claimed that the ministers had poisoned her unborn child, and she seemed to only want someone to listen to her. Mary raged that as long as she signed the execution warrant, Elizabeth would be sent to the gallows.
Mary, if you sign that paper, you will be murdering your own sister.
Aware of her dwindling time, she opened her heart to her younger sister, with whom she had been educated together since childhood.
When I am gone, you will do everything in your power to uphold the Catholic faith. Do not take away from the people the consolations of the Blessed Virgin, their Holy Mother. When I am queen, I promise to act as my conscience dictates.
In the end, Mary showed mercy, ordering Elizabeth to return to the castle and remain under house arrest. Before Elizabeth left, Mary intentionally made her appear before the ministers. Before the news of Mary's terminal illness spread, heretics exiled abroad to escape the massacre were stirring with anticipation. The Duke of Norfolk warned that the heretics would seek revenge upon their return, harming the old nobility. Thus, he arranged for assassins to kill Sir Francis Walsingham, who was returning from exile in France. Sir Walsingham, a loyal supporter of Elizabeth, had studied at Cambridge. The naive assassin drew a steel spike but could never bring himself to strike, ultimately being killed by Walsingham instead. Sir William quietly informed Elizabeth that many loyal nobles had returned to England. The current situation was favorable for her, but her life was still in danger, so he advised her to remain silent. The Spanish ambassador brought news that the King of Spain wished to propose to Elizabeth. However, Elizabeth declined due to Mary still being alive, though in reality, Mary was bedridden. The Duke of Norfolk pressured the Queen to sign the execution order for Elizabeth, insisting that the throne must never fall into the hands of heretics. Mary understood deep down that without an heir, executing Elizabeth would only lead to more chaos, and ultimately, she did not sign. Elizabeth confessed to Robert about the king's admiration for her. Although Robert was furious, he still encouraged her.
Elizabeth, Queen of England, a court to worship you, a country to obey you, poems written celebrating your beauty, music composed in your honor, and they will be nothing to you. I will mean nothing to you.
Oh, how could you ever be nothing to me? Robert, you know you are everything to me.
All that I am, it is you.
On the other hand, Queen Mary took her last breath. Norfolk removed the ring from the Queen's finger, representing the King's seal, and had it delivered to Elizabeth. A maid came to Elizabeth, bringing joyful news that she had successfully ascended to the throne. Elizabeth received the ring symbolizing the crown, becoming the new Queen of England.
The Queen is dead! Long live the Queen! Long live the Queen!
In 1558, Elizabeth was officially crowned. What she inherited was a country divided due to the religious reforms of Henry VIII and Queen Mary. The moment the crown was placed on her head, the innocent and romantic girl vanished, replaced by an ambitious young monarch. The era of Elizabeth officially began. The treasury was in deficit, and the conflict between Catholics and Protestants was sharp. The English navy was in decline, and there was no standing army. Militarily, France and Spain were poised to strike, leaving England unable to withstand any blows. Mary of Guise from Scotland demanded Elizabeth's throne. Domestically, the Duke of Norfolk also resented the Queen, creating internal and external troubles. Sir William advised Elizabeth to have an heir soon to stabilize the situation. The Queen hosted a grand court ball to select a husband. Robert was appointed as the cavalry commander, allowing him frequent access to the palace for clandestine meetings with Elizabeth. William assigned Sir Walsingham to oversee the Queen's security. The Spanish ambassador expressed the king's affection for Elizabeth, while the French ambassador urged her to consider a proposal from the Duke of Anjou, the king's nephew. The Queen's marriage had always been dictated by politics rather than youthful passion, and Elizabeth would never easily compromise. Elizabeth rejected the foreign royal proposals, as she still yearned for pure love in the world.
Play a Volta!
She and Robert exchanged glances filled with emotion, and it was evident that Robert was highly favored.
When may I see you in private?
In private? Have you forgotten, my lord? I am queen now.
Even at night, he would often boldly enter Elizabeth's chamber. Their affair gradually became an open secret. Duke William demanded that maids check the Queen's bed linens daily and report her condition to him at all times. For the Queen's body was no longer her personal property, it belonged to the entire nation. One day, the Duke of Norfolk barged into the Queen's chamber. He reported that the French Queen Mary had increased her troops by 4,000 at the border between England and France, suggesting that Elizabeth should go to war immediately. Sir Walsingham, however, believed she should observe patiently before taking action. The politically inexperienced Queen was unsure how to address this tricky issue. She recklessly took the Duke of Norfolk's advice. Ultimately, the war resulted in a disastrous defeat for the English forces, with rivers of blood and countless casualties. As Mary toured the battlefield, she saw underage soldiers. Thus, she ordered a boy to take back the French flag stained with the blood of English soldiers as an insult to Elizabeth.
Et dites à cette reine bâtarde de ne plus envoyer des enfants pour combattre Marie de Guise.
Elizabeth was infuriated but also filled with regret. The bishop pressured Elizabeth to abdicate due to the defeat. Opposition forces were rising everywhere, and Elizabeth's throne was unstable. Any action could become an excuse for her political enemies. Elizabeth confessed before her father's portrait, and Sir Walsingham appeared before her. Walsingham stated that the bishops were now openly opposing Elizabeth's regime. After investigation, Walsingham revealed that the bishops had intentionally sent underage children instead of regular troops to force Elizabeth's abdication, resulting in significant losses. Isolated and helpless, Elizabeth only wished to see Robert. As soon as they met, William and the French ambassador rushed in. William stated that as long as Elizabeth agreed to marry Mary's nephew, Duke Anjou, Mary would cease her harassment at the borders. For Elizabeth, this was nothing short of political coercion. Everyone remained silent. No one could make a decision for her. William urged Elizabeth to decide quickly, and she had no choice but to accept, causing Robert to leave in anger. People whispered among themselves. They could tolerate Robert as a colleague at court, but as a potential king, that was unacceptable. The nation faced a significant divide between religion and politics, with tensions between Catholics and Protestants escalating. Elizabeth aimed to rebuild the legal system, standardize the Act of Uniformity, and thoroughly end the struggle between the old and new religions. However, this clearly threatened the interests of the Catholics. Elizabeth rehearsed her speeches multiple times. On the day of voting, facing numerous challenges from the bishops, she needed to maintain a gentle demeanor while cleverly conveying her stance. Elizabeth did not humiliate those who questioned her. Rather, she used her unique humor to defuse the situation.
I ask you to pass this act of uniformity, not for myself, but for my people, who are my only care.
Madam, by this act, you force us to relinquish our allegiance to the Holy Father.
How can I force you, Your Grace? I am a woman.
The Duke of Norfolk contacted more hardline bishops to undermine her, but these bishops were arrested by Sir Walsingham before they could enter the palace. The bishops would never compromise easily, and they began to set their sights on the Queen's marriage.
Your Majesty would improve all these matters if you would agree to marry.
Marry but marry who, Your Grace? Will you give me some suggestion? For some say France and others Spain, and some cannot abide foreigners at all. So I'm not sure how best to please you unless I married one of each.
The Queen's exceptional wisdom earned her respect from all sides while also showcasing her remarkable leadership skills. After voting, the bill passed smoothly. The 5 imprisoned conspirators remained resolute in their determination to overthrow the Queen.
Your Graces must forgive me, but you're now free to go.
I am sure this infernal work has not saved your bastard Queen.
Her Majesty has won the argument.
My word count.
By 5, Your Grace.
Elizabeth's relatively tolerant religious policy promoted political stability at home, and she began to address external conflicts. Duke Anjou, the nephew of the French Queen, came to propose, and Elizabeth held a grand welcoming ceremony. A tall and handsome man walked at the front of the procession. Elizabeth's eyes lit up. He was indeed a striking gentleman.
No, because I am Anjou! Yes, I am Anjou, yes! I am Anjou! Yes. Oh, nom de Dieu, elle aime!
Caught off guard by Anjou's sudden kiss, Elizabeth clearly did not know how to react. The French ambassador also appeared awkward, but the flippant Duke Anjou paid no mind. The conspiracy intensified as the Pope met with priests from England. A plot to overthrow Elizabeth was soon to unfold. In British history, the relationship between Robert and Elizabeth is one of the most intriguing mysteries. Robert was the only man allowed to freely enter the Queen's chamber. Having known each other since childhood, they deepened their emotional bond during Elizabeth's imprisonment in the Tower of London, where Robert also found himself detained due to family connections. After Elizabeth ascended the throne, Robert became a member of the Privy Council and Master of the Horse. He long resided at the heart of the court, and Elizabeth openly referred to him as her other half. However, the cold ridicule from courtiers persisted. Now, with the French royal family proposing marriage again, only by becoming king could Robert silence their mockery.
I cherish hers, because in me it bides. My true love has my heart, and I have hers. Marry me.
The Queen looked towards the fireworks bursting in the distance, wanting to end the awkwardness. She loved Robert, but she was no longer the naive girl locked away in a castle. Now she bore the weight of England's fate on her shoulders. Robert wished for Elizabeth to marry him. Duke Anjou noticed their unusual relationship. Robert could not let go of this romantic night. He hoped the Spanish ambassador could be their witness. Suddenly the maid shrieks in horror. There is a commotion in the crowd, and a sharp arrow settles next to Elizabeth's ear. Elizabeth was escorted back to the palace by guards, and the sentinels outside increased. A hurried Robert was stopped from entering by the guards. In the shadows, the Spanish ambassador called out to him. He began to persuade Robert to join the Catholics, claiming that Spain would help him marry the Queen. Realizing he was becoming a pawn in a plot against the Queen, Robert firmly refused. Fortunately, Queen Elizabeth was not harmed. Duke William and the French ambassador pressed the Queen for her response to Duke Anjou's proposal.
Perhaps Her Majesty will not answer because her heart is already set upon another.
Elizabeth's thoughts were guessed accurately. She could only evade their questions by telling them not to be so presumptuous and then ordered them out. Sir William was angry with the Queen for the first time because rumors were spreading worldwide about her being pregnant with Robert's child.
Yes, Sir William, I live my life in the open. I am surrounded by people. I do not understand how so bad a judgment has been formed of me.
Madam, you cannot marry Lord Robert. He's already married.
It turned out that before Elizabeth ascended the throne, Robert had secretly married under family arrangements. While the bride's father was not a top noble, he owned extensive estates that could help the declining Dudley family regain economic footing. Once involved in court politics, Robert had kept his wife in a remote estate. He had been living apart from his wife for a long time until William exposed his lies. Facing cold indifference from the ministers, the Queen realized she had been toyed with, and her previous guilt dissipated. Elizabeth rejected the Spanish marriage alliance and instead drew closer to France, openly supporting attacks by English pirates on Spanish ships. The Spanish ambassador and the Duke of Norfolk secretly colluded, hoping Norfolk would act swiftly. Disillusioned with love, the Queen took out a ring as a token of affection to personally bestow it upon Duke Anjou. However, when she arrived at Duke Anjou's chamber, she was left speechless. The curtains could not conceal their entwined forms, mixed with the traces of rouge and ambergris on their bodies. Upon seeing the Queen, they immediately fell silent and rose to pay their respects. What was even more shocking was Duke Anjou's attire, resembling that of a noblewoman. The ring in her hand at this moment seemed to be a huge irony to the Queen. Duke Anjou was 21 years younger than Elizabeth, and the essence of this marriage was a political chess game. England needed France's support to counter Spain, while France hoped to expand its influence over England through this union. The Queen could never entrust her marriage to such a ridiculous man. She refused to listen to the French ambassador's explanations. William thought the union would go smoothly. Reflecting on Elizabeth's father, Henry VIII, who had 6 marriages, 2 of his wives were executed, including Elizabeth's mother, and Boleyn, and 3 others were annulled. As a young girl, Elizabeth witnessed her stepmother, Catherine Howard, being executed for adultery. Her screams echoed for a long time in the Tower of London. The court felt like a battlefield for marriage. This collective memory equating marriage with national disaster was deeply etched in the Queen's mind. The Queen then thought of Robert. In matters of their relationship, Robert was also a strategist who knew how to navigate the situation. He possessed the courage to confront the real wounds within himself and the wisdom to recognize when to hold back. This balance of emotion and reason transformed their close relationship into a crucible for life.
Do you love her?
No, I love you. I have always loved you. I was afraid of losing you because I was not free. For God's sake, you are still my Elizabeth.
I am not your Elizabeth. I am no man's Elizabeth. And if you think to rule, you are mistaken.
Robert believed Elizabeth had forgiven him, yet he again became the subject of ridicule in others' eyes.
I will have one mistress here, and no master!
This time, Robert took the initiative to approach the Spanish ambassador. His love for Elizabeth was no longer pure, but he still felt jealousy towards any suitor in her vicinity. The Spanish ambassador indicated that Duke Norfolk intended to assassinate the Queen, and if Robert could persuade her to marry the King of Spain, she would be protected and would forgive him. Robert sank into deep thought. The Pope signed a decree for the deposition of the English Queen, instructing the bishops to bring it back to England. The Pope decreed that anyone who assassinated the Queen would be called into heaven by angels. On the British coast, Duke Norfolk welcomed the returning bishops. As soon as the bishop came ashore, he killed the man Sir Walsingham had placed next to Norfolk. Soon, something even more frightening occurred. A maid secretly tried on the Queen's new dress and met with Robert in a corner. Suddenly, she let out a pained scream and collapsed. At that moment, a figure cloaked in black approached Elizabeth, but a swarm of maids rushed in, causing the figure to flee in haste. It turned out that the collapsed maid had been poisoned by the deadly toxin hidden in the Queen's new gown, a gift from France. Simultaneously, French Queen Mary secretly invited Sir Walsingham to Scotland. She hoped Walsingham would join her camp, even mocking Elizabeth for having no army and no friends, only enemies.
Madam, Her Majesty was, I believe, too hasty at rejecting the Duke's proposal of marriage.
But how can I marry such a woman? Huh? She's frigid! They even say she's really a man.
Facing the handsome Walsingham, Queen Mary set aside her dignity, and absurd thoughts arose in her heart. Walsingham clearly stated he would support Mary, claiming it was only a matter of time before Elizabeth was overthrown. His casual banter hung in the air, while Mary's eyes seemed to turn into molten caramel, wrapped in sweet threads. The next day, Duke Anjou wept by Mary's bedside. She had tragically died in her own bed, while Walsingham had long vanished without a trace. Anjou cursed Elizabeth, calling her a devil, but Elizabeth certainly denied any wrongdoing. Duke William criticized her for using such extreme violence to solve problems. The Queen was no longer the naive girl who had just ascended the throne. William's political ideology aimed to make England a vassal state of the great powers of Europe, but Elizabeth wanted to transform England into an independent and powerful nation, making William's weakness completely incompatible with her vision. The Queen appointed William as the Lord High Treasurer, allowing him to resign with dignity. Meanwhile, Count Walsingham encouraged Elizabeth.
The prince should never flinch from being blamed for acts of ruthlessness, which are necessary for safeguarding the state and their own person.
Robert requested an audience with Elizabeth, expressing his deep concern for her safety in such dangerous circumstances. He then suggested that now only the King of Spain could protect her, provided she agreed to marry him. A trace of disdain flickered in the Queen's eyes as she regarded the man who had once quarreled with her out of jealousy over her suitors. Her shattered heart reflected his twisted countenance. The once genuine love had turned into a blade of revenge. Walsingham, after conducting thorough investigations, uncovered that a British bishop had brought back the Pope's decree. The edict designated Duke of Norfolk as the successor to the English throne and required that Norfolk's queen must be the Queen of Scots. With the support of the Church, Norfolk was mustering troops, soon to outnumber the Queen's forces. Elizabeth realized her throne was in jeopardy, and she immediately ordered a search for the bishop's hideout. Walsingham captured him. Under harsh torture, the bishop revealed the Pope's orders and a list of traitors, including not only Duke Norfolk but also several of his associates. Unexpectedly, Robert's name was also on the list. This time, the Queen decided to eliminate her enemies without mercy.
Norfolk need do. Sign this paper, and treason will have been committed.
Then let him sign it.
Walsingham arranged for Norfolk's lover to guide him into signing the decree, solidifying his charges of treason. The Queen ordered the execution of all traitorous ministers on the list, including the Spanish ambassador, who had been conspiring with Norfolk. They arrested Norfolk.
I must do nothing by your orders. I am Norfolk.
You were Norfolk. The dead have no titles.
But he did not kill Duke Robert. The Queen felt her beloved had betrayed her. Her heart was in agony. The unfulfilled promises had become irreparable cracks in her heart.
Tell me why.
Is it not plain enough to you? It is no easy thing to be loved by the Queen. It would corrupt the soul of any man. Now, for God's sake, kill me.
No. I think rather to let you live. He shall be kept alive to always remind me of how close I came to danger.
The Queen's once deep love preserved Robert's life, and she wants Robert's presence to warn her forever. With the heads of Duke Norfolk and his accomplices falling, Walsingham assisted Elizabeth in eliminating all her enemies. Elizabeth transformed from a naive young girl into a seasoned politician. However, she felt an unprecedented loneliness. In fact, looking back at history, Elizabeth's choices in marriage were extremely limited. She could only choose a subject or a foreign monarch. If she chose the former, the marriage would not elevate her status, rather, it could lead to potential humiliation. If she selected the latter, while it might increase her titles and dominion, it would cost her significant sovereignty. Elizabeth understood that this was a predicament faced by female monarchs. Thus, she commanded her maids to cut off her long hair. She styled her hair in a masculine fashion to cover the scars left by smallpox, applying thick, white makeup. People could not discern her inner feelings or judge her thoughts by her expression. She possessed ambitions typical of a man and vowed never to marry again. She hosted a wedding with her country.
I am married to England.
With facts and actions, Elizabeth demonstrated to all who scorned female rulers that she was a capable and great monarch. She continued to rule England for 40 years, with Count Walsingham remaining her most trusted loyal subject. Later, as people sorted through Elizabeth's belongings, they discovered the ruby ring she had worn during her declaration of marrying the nation. The ring was composed of 6 diamonds forming the letter E, set in blue enamel. Throughout her 45-year reign, Elizabeth treasured this ring. Upon her death, people removed the ring from her hand, finding that the gem could be opened, revealing a hidden image carved of her mother and Boleyn. It turned out that throughout Elizabeth's life, filled with fear, pain, and brilliance, her mother's warmth always accompanied her. Beneath her seemingly cold exterior lay a deep longing for her mother, yet she had concealed this sentiment her entire life, never uttering a word until her death. Elizabeth never married and had several close lovers, Robert and his stepson becoming the 2 most famous. Robert's 2 marriages both conformed to his political ambitions. When Robert died, his son was only 19, while the Queen was already 55. Ultimately, young Robert was executed for treason by Elizabeth. In her final moments, Elizabeth continuously called out Robert's name. Though Elizabeth's innocence coexisted with bloodshed, the world referred to her as someone for whom all of England should be grateful. The Elizabethan era was also the pinnacle of England, and the Virgin Queen became one of the most renowned monarchs in British history.